Hi, my friends. Welcome to the Grow There with Cheria podcast. One of my favorite lines in a movie is from Love Actually. Say about that movie what you will, but there's a scene with Emma Thompson. Her character is interacting with her brother, Liam Neeson, and Liam Neeson has just lost his wife to cancer. And he's talking through just what he's going through with his stepson, who he's now taking care of. And he's just really in the weeds of grief. And Emma Thompson touches his hand and says to him, "There was always going to be a totally shit time." I think about that line all the time. Every time things in life just take a dip in a way that I wasn't expecting. Every time I feel slightly sideswiped by a challenge that's calling on me to be resilient, I think to myself, there was always going to be a totally shit time, just like there's always going to be a totally beautiful and wondrous time. And our guest today is someone who I met when I was going through a totally shit time. I was at this place. I had just some big things happening in my life, big changes that I was having to let go of. A job that I loved, a person who I loved, and I was deep in grief. Recently I listened to a guy on TikTok. Gosh, I wish I remembered to write down his name, but he was talking about how a lot of times when we go through grief, we think of it as a journey to get through. But really, it's more of a language that we need to become fluent in because it's part of life. And I think as you go down the path of life, you experience more things, more totally shit times. And in making sense of them all, you learn to become fluent in the language of grief or fluent in the language of your own emotional system. And our guest, like I said, Laura Brunow, is someone who I turned to when I felt like I wanted something a little different to support me through my grief process. If you're familiar with the practice of Reiki, Laura is a Reiki practitioner, but she is so much more than that. She's a brand designer, a creative producer, a community builder, a true community builder. Like I said, a Reiki master, an herbalist, and she's a mom and lives in San Francisco, where I live. She created a conference for Pinterest, which is still going on to this day. She creative directed and produced a live art event at the SF MoMA, which is one of my favorite museums of all time. She's run 2 photography magazines. She started 2 creative retreat series, which are these very cool adult camp programs. And she's just done so much more. And right now, she's launching an initiative called Communities of Care to give communities such as veterans and cancer patients access to Reiki as a somatic peer support group tool, which is really cool. She's going to talk a little bit more about that today. So to me, she's become a friend, but she's also one of those people that just has healing energy. And sometimes when you're going through a shit time, whether that's at the intersection of work and life, or that's just work or just life, you need to find those people in your life who help to heal and restore you. And she's one of those people for me. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to my friend, Laura Bruno. Okay. Laura, I'm so happy you're here. I can't believe that this is happening. This is such a special moment for me. I was thinking about having you on the podcast, and I realized that you would do your best to like protect our relationship. But for me, I'm an open book. And first time I met you, I was like crying to you within like 60 seconds of talking to you. Um, because I was coming to you for Reiki, and I was at this place in my life where I had never done Reiki before. I had a ton of disruption going on in my life, and all I thought is, I need someone to help me move this energy somehow that's in my body. And I I remember looking you up I was looking for some Reiki work, even though I didn't know what it was about. And I thought to myself, I don't know if I believe in this, but what I do know is you can't go wrong with being in a serene space and laying down and having someone have good intentions for you. Like that was the
Mhm.
only thing that was in my head. And sure enough, just within seconds of meeting you, I just felt so clearly that you were my people. And I'm just so grateful that you're here today sharing this space with me. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. You've been such a treasure to get to know and always brought so much wisdom every time we talk, whether Reiki or other times getting together.
I know it's also been fun to start being friends. I know I kind of forced friendship on you, but I'm really happy I did.
I just wanted to make sure I was doing it all ethically and check in with my teacher and everything. So it's like the
Yeah.
client boundaries wanted to be sure, but obviously you're a treasure and I'm so happy to be your friend as
Fine.
well.
Oh, thanks, Laura. Well, you know why we're here. I
Mhm.
am on a mission to learn from some of the wisest people I know about a time in your life where work and life intersected. So I'd love for you to share a
Mhm.
story with me about a time in your life when something happened to you personally that really impacted you professionally, or vice versa, something that happened professionally that really impacted you personally.
I love this question. And I'm 42 years old, and I think, like many people my age, I'm facing health issues. Things are
Mm,
not working the way that they did before. And I've always been a kind of a health nut, and I've always had to take care of my health. I have food intolerances, etc. So I thought I was doing great, thought I was ahead of the game. And last spring of 2023, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, which came as a
mm,
huge shock. And luckily, I'm so, so grateful it was early stage. It was stage 0 when they found it, and stage 1A is how it was reclassified. But I was told that I had to have a mastectomy within 4 to 6 weeks, not months, weeks,
mm.
of getting this
Wow.
diagnosis. And I had a wonderful experience with Kaiser San Francisco, but everything happened extremely fast.
Yeah.
So this was, and I'm single. I was single then, and it was sort of like a very unsettling, disruptive experience. Even though I'm so grateful I didn't have chemotherapy or
Yeah.
radiation. I just had a mastectomy and a reconstruction. But regardless, it was extremely disruptive and upsetting, and came with lots of anxiety and needs, like
Y
community needs, for
yeah.
support. And from someone who is kind of the mama duck of her friend group, it was like, okay, well, how do I ask people to come take care of me when I will have a 6 week recovery? How do I do this without a partner?
Wow.
At
Yeah.
a time when I'd been partnered for all of my adult life and like sort of single for the
Yeah.
first time too.
I can't imagine that feeling, to your point, of being a mama duck and having to switch again so quickly, 4 to 6 weeks, having to embody a different mindset all of a sudden when you're so used to taking care of others. That must have been such just a total mind shift. I don't know how you did that so quickly.
It was hard. And, something wise I heard someone else say was that it's easier to give than to receive, because when you give,
Mm.
you're in control. And for
Yeah.
those of us who feel safe when we're in control and don't mind being generous, you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
In quotes, being generous. Yeah, totally.
And I think that had been my mode very much, was, always trying to do a favor first for any person I met, but also, like, there's another side to that of being in control through that.
Yeah.
And so then needing to cash in a lot of favors all at once did feel extremely vulnerable. But
Mm.
it was such a sweet, sweet experience. Like, I ended up having a former boss sponge bathe me, and we're both just
Wow.
crying. And it was such a movie moment. And having so many
Wow.
friends just kind of there, I'm laying in bed looking kind of gray as anyone would after surgery, and having them say like, "We wanna do this for you. We wanna be here."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it ended up feeling like 40 birthdays in one. Like I felt so
Mm,
loved in a way that really deeply filled my cup. Um,
wow.
but something else strange, like to tie this to professional life, something else strange happened in that experience, which is, well, we've talked about, I don't know how Reiki works. I do believe there's science behind it, or, or that someday maybe we'll be able to explain it with science. There are phenomena that happen. We don't have the science for them currently.
Mm,
Um, and related to that, I started to get Reiki clients who were stage zero. They call it DCIS. Don't
mm.
ask me right now what that stands for. I'm sure. I guess ductal carcinoma in situ, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, I started getting Reiki clients with almost my exact diagnosis, which is
Wow.
specific. Like stage two, stage three, stage four is a different situation. And my heart goes out to those folks. And I can't say that I really understand their experience. But
Mm,
interestingly, the people that just showed up were also stage zero and in my same boat. And I noticed, okay, this is that one of them was a social worker. And I thought, wow, this is going to be really expensive for her to keep coming to
mm,
see me. And I was telling her about community clinics and other opportunities that would be more affordable, or just kind of trying to solve this. And she ended up doing a fundraiser from friends and coming to me a lot, kind of
mm.
figuring it out on her end. But still, I wanted to think about how could I make something more scalable for people who
Yeah.
need it. And that's where the idea came to create. I'm starting to teach Reiki as of this month. I'm teaching my first class. I
Amazing.
just finished a 2.5 year Reiki master apprenticeship. So, and I've been
Yes.
studying for almost 7 years total. So I do take it
Wow.
very seriously. And I'm in a very strict lineage where we do everything the long, hard, right way, which I appreciate. Anyway, so I'm starting to teach, and I want to have a Reiki 1 class that is specifically for early stage breast cancer patients
Mm,
so that they can
yeah.
support each other. Because not everybody, I've lived in San Francisco for 18 years. What if I had just moved to a new community and was
Yeah.
single? You know what I mean?
Mm,
And it's like just knowing that not everybody has those built in support networks or has had, the fortune or opportunity to build those. So I really love the idea of giving that gift to people, not only a
mm.
healing tool for themselves, but something that they could share with each other. And something kind of interesting about Reiki is so it's Japanese designed. We know the Japanese have a beautiful knack for design. And
Yeah.
in just one weekend, you can learn so much. Like, think like even if you were doing a meditation training, it'd probably be more than 16 hours. Probably won't be more
Yeah.
than a
Right.
weekend. But the way it's designed, it's so cleverly put together that you can get started in just that short amount of time. So I would say it has an accessibility that's rare.
Mm,
Like massage is here, even meditation is here, but Reiki is really uniquely accessible, which can
yeah.
sometimes be criticized because people will say that they're Reiki masters after a weekend, which is not right.
Sure.
But
Right.
but you can be
Yeah.
Reiki 1 after a weekend and help each other a lot. So I feel like this unique aspect of Reiki in that it's really accessible makes it a perfect fit for creating somatic peer support groups within
Yeah.
that structure. So am I making sense? Maybe you can
Oh my
help
gosh, you're
me
making so much
clarify.
sense. And you're making so much sense. And I think it's so beautiful when you talk about the accessibility of the practice, because I think that's one of the biggest barriers to people experiencing many things that help them heal or shift
Wow.
energies or all of these things. And it, I don't know, for some reason, it's making me think about how I studied theology in undergrad, and this is very random and abstract, but I remember when I was spending all this money to go to school to study this
Mhm,
thing, I
mhm,
remember thinking to myself, "This should have been more accessible all along. The things that I was learning
mhm.
then should have like, this just shouldn't have I shouldn't have to spend all this money to learn this." But I think that what you're talking about is how do you create the right kind of investments for your healing that allow you to heal and thrive in perpetuity. And that's
Mm.
so powerful. It's so powerful. I want to come back, if you don't mind, to
Mhm.
kind of the beginning, middle, and end of this, you've been in this work, you've been studying for 7 years,
Mhm.
studying to be a healer, an energy mover, and all of these things, and then faced with faced with the reality of what's happening in your body. And I think that's a interesting when we talk about the intersection between work and life. For many of us, there's there's a time when we're actually able to see how one painful challenge and experience it's going to change the rest of our lives. It's going to change the way we show up to life. And and a lot of times we stop with the fear of what that might be. Um obviously being stage 0, knowing that you were able to, address this early on, there's still fears that come along with what's the long-term impact? What are all of these pieces? But not only did you navigate through that, you're so quickly that was last spring. You're so quickly
Mhm.
allowing this experience to shift you and what you do and how you show up in the world and an offering that you now want to provide. And I'm just curious for you, how do you feel like this has grown you? How
Mhm.
how has this grown you up?
Yeah, I love this question. I mean, I really felt like it wasn't a bad thing. And,
Mhm,
in the spiritual world, they talk a lot about, things not being so black and white, dualistic, non dualistic, et cetera. And I've always really agreed with that, that things aren't bad things or good things, that they're always more nuanced than that.
mhm,
But I had so much fun in that few weeks after my first surgery. My kids even
mhm.
said, "Mom, you should have surgery more often." Like, this is because they got almost felt like a wedding or something,
Mhm.
because so many friends came through and family, and they all met each other for the first time. Some of them, the kids got to be close with my friends who aren't good with kids. You know what I mean? Are
Yeah,
naturally good with
yeah.
kids. And so much of that happened. And again, I just felt so deeply loved in a way
Mm,
like that, whatever, like, someone forgot my birthday or what, like, whatever, like, little funny quirks I had in me, it really filled the cup in there. Um,
yeah, yeah.
so that was a huge thing, and I think the lessons are still coming. I am still absolutely dealing with anxiety about it,
Mm,
the fear of recurrence or,
yeah,
I found out the other day a friend has stage 4 cancer, and I hear sometimes about people who, um do have breast cancer recurrence and like what that navigating that. So that's a huge health anxiety that I have now.
yeah,
You know that I walked the Camino hike in Europe
yeah.
in June. I did a 180-mile hike over 12 days,
Amazing.
carrying my luggage on my back as a way. It was about 15 miles a day as a way to kind of clean my emotional house and
Mm,
process, do a deep, deep layer of composting and processing all that's
yeah,
happened over the last few years. So that was a huge step. And I feel like a different person after that. And long
yeah,
distance walking and hiking and nature time are enormous tools that I really connected with more deeply.
yeah,
So I think that's a huge lesson out of it too. And I think, the anxiety is not going to go away overnight. I think it's going to take a few years and hopefully a few years of no anvils dropping, no big events
yeah,
in life.
yeah,
Though I
yeah,
haven't had that. I kind of had a
yeah,
compound grief situation, but hopefully, we don't know what's around the next curve. We never
yeah.
do,
We
right?
never know. We never do. We never do. And I think what you're saying about, first of all, watching your Camino experience was so amazing because even though I wasn't there with you, I felt like I was a little bit there with you in the way you're describing and it's cleaning up your emotional house. Isn't there something magical about walking forward and leaving things behind
Mhm.
that it's like even if you're carrying all the weight that you're carrying physically to do this,
Mhm.
you have everything you need to withstand that, to take care of that, and to also leave all the emotional stuff behind. It's just such a powerful. And not even leave it all behind because some of it becomes your friend, but And
Mhm.
quite literally, while you're on this Camino experience, I just loved all the new friends and the new energy that was coming in, as you were
Mhm.
leaving your emotional house. To your point, when you go through something that you've gone through and it leaves traces like anxiety, it becomes all the more important to be investing in the constant tidying of your person, of who you are, and I
Mhm.
I I admire the way I get to witness you do that. It's a beautiful thing. I'm curious about, as you begin teaching others more about this work, how will you teach differently now than you would have before?
Ah. Well, one, I just want to say I love your metaphor about moving forward and leaving some things behind. That's not one,
Mm.
and carrying some things with you. That's not really one that I had thought about. I'll be honest, I sweat so much, like more than ever in my life during
Yeah.
that process, because it's just 10 hours of exercise, low grade exercise a day for
Yeah.
12 days. And so that was really what I thought about starting each day fresh without that, whatever
Mhm.
you left behind
Mhm.
the day before. But I hadn't really thought about what you take with you. And I'll be honest that can I ask your wisdom on something? I'd love to get your
Sure,
thoughts on
I'll
this.
do my best. Yeah.
So, on the last few days, so I had really set an intention to let go of anger and resentment, some
Mm,
other situations from my life during the Camino. And I got to the last couple days and I thought, I'm still resentful
mm,
and felt bummed about that. I just thought everything would be solved, everything would be fixed because I did this magical adventure across Europe, right? Which it wasn't,
mm.
right? I got a lot out of it and I can't wait to do it again. But I didn't magically solve every problem in my life, of course.
Yeah.
But my question for you is like, so I kind of felt like, well, maybe some of this resentment and anger is useful. Maybe I
Mhm.
did shed what I didn't need. But how would you, I'd love just a little bit of your thoughts on anger and resentment and how to work with those, like both in personal and professional context.
Yeah. It's interesting. Anger is one of the things I experience more rarely, but resentment is something I've had learned to have a relationship with, I guess. And what I've found is that when I am experiencing resentment, it almost always has so much more to do with resentment I hold toward myself and forgiveness that I need to surface for myself. Because when I resent, it's because I violated something of myself in order for that resentment to even have been given birth,
Mm,
And so for me, the areas in my life where I think that person treated me this way and I resent them for it, I almost always look at myself in the mirror and I have to say, Sharia, I forgive you for allowing that to happen.
mhm,
And the resentment that I'd like to continue to project on someone else doesn't serve me anymore. But
mm,
here's what will serve me. Sharia,
mhm,
I have your back. I see how I neglected you. I see how I didn't listen to what you needed. I see how I allowed you to push your boundaries more than you were willing to let them be pushed. And
mhm,
I won't do that again, or I'll do my very best not to do that again. And then the resentment, and I think in some ways that's why the anger comes less often for me,
mhm,
because it almost always gets redirected, not towards myself. I think,
mhm,
thankfully, I haven't felt like I need to be angry with myself. It just feels more like this is the most important thing about being human and growing up, is recognizing that my experience is what I'm making it. And even in ways where people have completely violated me, and I should say, let me back up, because there are many cases of reasons why people would have resentment for people violating others in heinous ways that are unforgivable. but I can say that in my experience, most of the ways that I've ever had resentment, there's more of a lesson for me to learn about how I
Mhm.
want to show up, love, and protect myself, that have little to do with the other person or other party. Um, so yeah, I don't know. That's
Well, I
kinda where
love
I'm at.
that so much, and I'm so happy we have it recorded so I can listen to that again because this is
Mhm.
sort of we all have stuff we digest or learn in life, and I think that's the
Yeah,
way I'm growing up right now. And
yeah,
I also love well, one, it just speaks to kind of a little bit of accountability, personal accountability, and reparenting together. Like, so like
yes,
a really self-compassionate accountability,
yes,
form of
yes.
accountability. And I feel like this has such a connection to the workplace because I can think about this pretty non-emotionally when I think about I've worked at many stages of startup and I like
Mhm.
them all. But on the earlier stages, you have fewer systems and processes because you haven't been burnt yet, right?
Yeah,
And then as things come up, you realize like, okay, we need to have a policy around that. And then if you work at sort of, I've worked at some that have been around for 20 years, earlier tech
yeah,
that are, anyway, and they have every rule for everything and you kind of can get kind of
yeah,
slogged down by it. And it's
yeah.
such interesting, like thinking about that parallel between the personal and the professional. Like, how do you find that right balance of having the boundaries that keep you protected and
Mhm.
the flexibility to let life in? And I think
Yes.
that's an interesting topic that ties exactly to the way workplaces run as well.
Yeah, I love the way that you just said that. It's so true, and obviously I grow there in the culture space where we often talk about how culture is everyone's responsibility because we're all creating it. But you were always having to look at what are the systems in place that are breeding resentment? Why is that happening? Where is the business accountable? Where are the people accountable? And it's a constant conversation and a push and pull between those things that is necessary. And I think one of the differences I find is that in the workplace, oftentimes it's easier for everyone to point the finger at other people.
Mhm.
In our personal lives, when we point the finger at other people, it hurts us more. And I think that's the same in the workplace. It's just more difficult to see because there are so many systems and dynamics at play and you're dealing with so many people. But I think people can get a little uncomfortable with the word personal responsibility and things like that. But for me, I've always found that in every situation, it almost always serves me better when I'm willing to take personal responsibility. And
Mhm.
for me, doing that isn't like the parent who is unfair and not seeing the child. For me, parenting myself in that way is the most loving and compassionate way of showing up. And I guess maybe to zoom back and to come to your question once again around resentment and anger, I think if I had to answer it in one sentence, how I deal with that is I double down on loving myself,
Mm.
probably what it is. And I think
Mhm.
that is honestly in the workplace, that's one of the things I think where I see people kind of constantly fighting to navigate a system that sometimes feels rigged against them. They're trying to figure out how do I get promoted or how do I build good rapport with my colleagues or how do I get this project to a place that it has visibility within the organization and that's good for my reputation. And almost always if I could it sounds so woo-woo, but this is why I wanna grow those guiding principles is work in love. It's like, if you can just double down on loving yourself, the other
Mhm.
things fall into place.
Mhm.
You're more compassionate towards yourself, you're more compassionate towards others, you look for the doors that are opening, and you don't spend all your time trying to pound down the doors that are closed to you. There's just so many things.
Mhm.
Now I'm talking too much, Laura.
Well, I
Um,
love it, and it's also helpful. I can answer that question, though, about how I would teach differently, though, if it's helpful.
yes, yes,
Um,
please.
well, so, of course, having the curated classes, and this is a big part of my philosophy around event design. A lot of my work is event design besides being a Reiki practitioner. I started the employee conference at Pinterest, years ago called NitCon that is still sort of a pride and joy for them. And I'm so happy it's a good fit. I did a live art event with SF MoMA honoring the art practices of the SF MoMA staff. So doing these really human and curated events is really important to me.
Mm.
So when I had that idea to curate my Reiki 1 classes, I've just been so excited because I know the magic that comes from getting a group of people who have something in common together and giving them time I've also
Yeah.
run creative retreats in the past, one for best and brightest emerging photographers and one for leaders in the food community, both that were absolute magic. And I want to do that kind of community building work again. I know how absolutely life changing it is. So,
Mhm.
yeah, getting these folks together. I have one for early stage breast cancer, one for end of life workers. I have a hospice worker client who asked me to do one for end of life care, death doulas, hospice workers, so that they can support each other through the very important and difficult work that they do. I have a community clinic for veterans next month in September 2024 at the SF Buddhist
Amazing.
Center because I'd love to really support that group in having community tools to care for each other. And then another, if I can share an anecdote from the Camino that relates to this will definitely
Yeah.
sound woo woo. But after a long day of hiking, I came to a pine forest and there was a beautiful pine tree that just like spoke to me more than all the others. And there was a little
Right.
clearing of grass right in front of it, kind of off the road. And I was hiking solo. I did this solo. So I decided just to go meditate there for a while, just to sit and meditate with this pine tree and the others around it. And this pine tree just seemed to glow. I can't explain it. I
Mm.
can't every day normally see auras, even though I'm an energy healer. I'm a very practical energy healer. But this one, I just felt like it was glowing. And I was just very quiet there for a while, meditating, and then opened my eyes again and just really felt that. And I sort of tried to communicate with this tree, like, how do you glow so brightly? And the message that I felt that I got back was by sharing my light with others, like that. And I felt so much glow coming from this tree to me. And it
Yeah.
made so much sense to me that this or whoever wants to shine brightly can do so by helping others shine brightly. And I've really
Yeah.
taken that to heart since then, and I'm so excited to take that on in my classes. Like, so as I'm
Mm.
teaching people to also give the gift of healing touch to those in their communities, or maybe if they go on to do Reiki 2 or Reiki 3 to become practitioners, just really helping them be the absolute best, brightest, shining stars that they can be as my way of showing up in the world.
Oh, that was so beautiful. And
Yeah.
it almost feels like it's not just a beautiful anecdote on its own. It feels like you embody that. It just,
Mhm.
you really embody that. And I as you were sharing, there's so much we could talk about your journey, but I knew that you were the person for me. I knew that you were the person
Mhm.
for me to and have this Reiki experience with when we first met because you do culture work,
Mhm.
you are a culture practitioner, culture architect just like I am, and
Mhm.
you build not only beautiful spaces and experiences, but most importantly, communities, and you keep propagating goodness through your communities, and it's such an honor to be in close proximity to you. Really, it truly is. So I I would love to I'm gonna ask you, we close with some rapid fire questions.
Let's go.
But yeah, so before I get to the question, though, I do want to just make a little space for if people want to find you or, reach out to you. I know you've got like, what's the best way for people to connect to
I
you?
think I'll keep it simple. On Instagram, I'm at LBM. So think of IBM, but LBM.
That's perfect. And you have the best websites ever, but all your websites are my favorite because they're so to the point. Obviously, you're in branding, you're incredible at it. So,
Well, I'm
anyways,
redoing
please.
all of them, but thank you anyway.
I know I need to redo Grow there as well.
No, yours is
Okay, well,
amazing. Don't change anything. It's amazing.
oh, thank you. Okay, let's do rapid fire questions. There's 9 of them, so
Okay,
do your
I'm
best
ready.
to just not overthink. The
Uh-huh.
first question is fill in the blank. Growth
Uh-huh.
is
Care.
mm, what is the very first thing you realized you were good at?
Events.
Mm. What was your first job?
Photo developer at Eckerd Drug in Texas.
That's amazing.
Photo
That's
lab. Photo
amazing.
lab worker, basically.
What's something you're trying to learn right now?
I'm getting better at portrait photography.
Oh, I love that. I love
I
that.
do
What's
headshots
some
professionally, but I wanna get better.
Oh, that's great. I might need to hit you up for that.
This is a perfect aside moment. I'm gonna do a day for anyone in the Bay Area, a day of headshots, which I already do for all the top companies and I'm good at, but I wanna get better. I'm gonna do it as a fundraiser for communities of care, which is the veterans and et cetera, so that people can
Yeah,
get a tax deductible nonprofit donation and get a new headshot. So that
that's
will
brilliant.
happen in the next couple months. So I got you.
That's brilliant. I will be there. Can't wait. Can't wait.
Mhm.
What's something you're trying to unlearn?
Oh, worrying,
Mm, yeah, that's good.
self-criticism, both.
Aren't we all? Mhm. Um, name a book or a movie that changed your life.
Oh, the thing that came to mind is Wild from Cheryl Strayed about hiking
Mm,
the Pacific Coast Trail, which of course I want to try
yeah,
sections of now that I'm a hiking nerd.
love that. When growth feels good, how do you celebrate?
Mhm. When I do things I hate to do, like mop or vacuum or taxes or any of those things, I just go, Laura, go, Laura, in my house by myself to try to reinforce the habit.
I love that. When growth feels hard, how do you take care of yourself?
Reiki, baths, but I would say even more so exercise. Running uphill, and we have beautiful hills here in San Francisco,
Mm,
is medicine. I think it gets the cortisol moving through instead of getting
yeah,
it stuck. Because
totally
I it's
agree.
like they say in fight or flight, it just all like glucose comes out, and it's like, well,
Mhm.
why not burn it off and then feel more normal?
Totally agree. Totally agree. Last question. When you grow all the way up and you leave
Mhm.
this life,
Mhm.
what will you congratulate yourself on?
Well, I have thought many times that on my deathbed, I will know that I did good work because of the friendships and connections and collaborations that came out of the retreat that I did in my 20s and 30s. And so
Mm,
that's why a return to community building feels so good to me.
I love that so much. Laura, you're such a gem. I'm so lucky to have you in my life. Thank you for sharing your story with us. And I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Well, till next time.